Okay, so we have covered chapter 2. And again, next week, Monday, we will review, and then Wednesday, we will test over chapter 2. But before we do that, I wanted to start you guys on project number 1, because number 1, we are ready. We are to the point where we're ready to begin that project. And number 2, I think working on it now in class and then starting to work on it a little bit here and there will really help kind of reinforce what we're doing in chapter 2. And hopefully that will lead to better test scores next week. So I handed you a printout that's the instructions. I know it's not like super big text or anything, but at least you have something in front of you so you're not having to flip back and forth between tabs. But if you haven't already, go ahead and log into Canvas. And if you scroll down, it's actually under Unit 3 because that's when we'll finish it up. But if you scroll down through the end of Chapter 3, you should see a link to project number 1. Okay. And notice again, it's not due until March 11th. Okay, so this will be due right before spring break. We're going to finish up project number 1 after completing chapter 3. Okay, but again, there's a lot of it we can go ahead and get started. So go ahead and open up project 1, which will open up in Cengage.
We don't need to read the instructions or anything?
No, that's just a video, and I'm actually videoing today too,
okay.
Just to help you guys out. Good question though. So you can hit start assignment now. So I'll start out by saying this is a comprehensive project. So we are going through a lot of the account between project 1 and 2. We will cover the entire accounting cycle. So again, we'll work on project 1 in chapters 2 and 3, and we'll wrap up probably before spring break. And then around then, before spring break, we'll talk about chapter 4, and that's when project 2 will kind of deal with project 2, which is a continuation of this. So project 1 and 2, it's just 2 parts of the same project. Okay, so you have to complete project 1 to do project 2. Put it that way. Make this. So I printed off these instructions because I think it's helpful to have. If you look at your whole project though, you have like 6 different tabs. So you have the instructions page. If you click on chart of accounts, we actually have a chart of accounts and for this company, Kelly Consulting. So we're going to use that. And then you'll see we have our journal, and I'll open these in a minute. We have a ledger, an unadjusted trial balance, and an adjusted trial balance. So again, up through chapter 2, we can complete the journal, the ledger, and the unadjusted trial balance. Okay. So in this project, if you look at the instructions, it says Kelly Pitney began her consulting business, Kelly Consulting, on April 1st, 2018. Her accounting cycle starts for April. Including financial statements, was illustrated, well, it's in chapter 3, I guess. During May, Kelly Consulting entered into the following transactions. So they're giving us May 3rd through May 17th. And then if I scroll down, I see the rest of that month's transactions, May 20th through May 31st. So then the instructions start on what is required. So what we're going to do in essence, I'm not going to read through all the instructions, I'm going to tell you. We are going to journalize all of those transactions into the journal. We are going to take those journal entries and post them to a ledger, which will be an Excel spreadsheet in this case. Okay, you don't have to have Excel experience to work in it. I'll show you what you need to know and how to do it. Okay, so you will want to save that Excel spreadsheet to your computer. If you have a flash drive, that's great and wonderful. You can save it to that. If you do not, we do have the Google Drive that's associated with your rader.rose.edu, and we can always use that to save it to as well. So we have options for saving. So whatever you work on in class today, you'll want to make sure and save. So that spreadsheet, the ledger, is a separate Excel spreadsheet account that we'll keep. So you're going to journalize all of May's transactions and post all of those to the ledger. So when you're finished with those 2 parts, which is the lengthy part of the project, you'll do an unadjusted trial balance. So all 3 of those steps, which is number 1, and then let's see, you'll be able to do steps 1 through 3, 1, 2, and 3, okay, right now. Again, there's no specific amount you should get done between now and, when we start chapter 3, but I wanted to introduce this to you because, again, what we're doing in this project reinforces what we're learning in chapter 2. So, big things to get you started is on the back side of your instruction sheet that I handed you, notice there's what we call a post-closing trial balance. Well, we haven't talked about what that is, but these are ending account balances as of April 30th. We're starting May 1st. So the first step in this project, we're going to take these balances and put them in our ledger. We're going to set up our ledger with beginning balances. Kind of similar to that little example we did when we did supplies on account and we put in a beginning balance in our practice. So we're going to do that first together, and then you'll be ready to start journalizing. Okay. So in your comprehensive problem, go ahead and click on the Ledger tab. The Ledger tab. And there's a blue spreadsheet link. Go ahead and click that. And when you do, it should download it, and then you can click it to open it up. Okay. So this is our Excel worksheet. When the tab that it opens to is not required. So this end of period spreadsheet or worksheet is not required to turn in. It will help you, and we'll talk about that in chapter 3. But number 1, the first thing you want to do after you open it, make sure you click up here in that kind of yellow tan colored bar along the top, enable editing. Otherwise you won't be able to do anything. So click enable editing. Enable editing. And then the second thing you want to do is come down here and click on where it says ledger at the bottom in the gray. So you'll want to click on the ledger to open that specific worksheet. I'm going to make mine bigger. Okay, so they've already put together, because Excel is extremely powerful and wonderful program, they've already set up for you a ledger that goes along with this company. So these are all of our accounts that we're using in our business in order, chart of account order. So this is what a ledger looks like in the real world. Okay. So it's a nice exposure to real world concepts. So we have cash, account number 11, and then we have places to put in all of our journal entries. Anytime we debit or credit cash, we're going to put it in here. And if you scroll down, you can scroll down through all of the accounts. Accounts receivable, account number 12, supplies, account 14, and so on and so forth. So you'll have all the accounts that we use in the company. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of tips and hints as we go through this. When you're doing the first journal entries, the May journal entries, there might be accounts on here that you do not use, like income summary. We don't know what that is. We haven't learned it yet. Don't use it. Okay. There's going to be a couple others. Okay. So when you're going through and you're like, oh, I journalized everything and I have these accounts I haven't even used, don't worry. Okay. You won't use every account in this first part because we're going to do adjusting entries and closing entries in chapters 3 and 4. So there's some accounts that you may not even know, like income summary. Okay. So that's my first little tip. So again, the first thing we want to do is we want to go off of the back sheet of your instructions, and we want to take all of these ending April 30th balances and put them in to set up our ledger. Because what this is saying, this post-closing trial balances, these are the current balances in these accounts. So just the accounts listed here, we're going to go in and set up our ledger. So how I do that is you truly can just click, you know, next to line 1 here in our date field. That's where we're going to get started. Okay. And we're going to make these May 1st beginning balances. So I'm just going to type May or 5-1. You can type May 1st, however you want to do it. I don't care.
You know, put
Do you have a
5-1 on every single.
You can do 5-1 or May 1 or 5, however you want to do it. Yeah. Honestly, once you put May the first time, you can just put the date after that, like the 3rd, 4th, 5th.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So slow down a little bit. Oh, you're in. And scroll up to the top. Oh, yeah, just click ledger. Yeah, perfect. And then just scroll up to the top. And you'll be right where we are. Perfect. Okay.
What do you do right here? Like, you can do item cash.
Oh, no, I'm going to show you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Alright.
good. Yeah. So in that item, we really don't have to put anything in this chapter, but since this is a beginning balance, I'm just going to put balance. You don't have to, but I think it, helps us remember that it's a balance. So yeah, for all of your other journal entries though, when you're posting to the ledger, like when we deal with our first cash entry from the journal, you just leave item blank. Okay, but we'll put balance here. And then I'm just going to put an X in the post reference column because this is a beginning balance, so we don't have a journal page it came from. And then go all the way out to the right hand columns because we want to put our balances over here in these balance columns. Okay, so make sure you're in the debit column for balance, and it's 22,100. And you, just like in Cengage, it'll do the formatting for you, so you don't have to type all that. Yeah, that makes it a little bit easier, right? It won't do the math for you, unless you know how to use Excel formulas, and then, have at it, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're just doing this. We're putting the date, the word balance, and X under post reference. And then for cash, it's a $22,100 debit balance. Okay. And then I'm just going to continue down on these balances and put them in. So wherever there's a debit, I'm going to put it on the debit. Credits go on the credits. So accounts receivable, I'm doing the same thing.
Oh, wait, what? You go to each one differently? Okay.
Yes, yeah, you're going to set up each account.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah, because the ledger is
That's weird.
a collection of each account's
Oh, I see
balance.
that now.
Yeah, it gets a little tricky, right? So yeah,
Y'all
we're
gonna see it.
do what?
Yeah, they gonna see it. It's all gonna come together.
The light bulb.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's always that with accounting.
The
Okay.
questions you guys probably want to ask now is the same thing that I was asking too. It's like, where's the Excel spreadsheet? Where do I put all this stuff in it? Where do I pull it? So I could like let it all come together and let it all click.
Yep, that's what we are gonna do, right? So as you can see, I'll just let you guys work.
Is there any way, a shorter way to get it from each one without having to tab each one?
You can click in it. You can just
I
click with
know,
your
but I'm
mouse.
just, I was like, is there a button that now you would think to get you all the way down to it?
Well, you can write a program.
Right.
You want to write a macro?
You know what, I'm like, oh.
I told Excel that me and Excel are gonna be friends.
Hey, that's it's a good thing to be friends with. Excel's one of my best friends. That may be sad, right? That sounds really sad. At work. There we go.
Oh.
Yeah, my husband would probably disagree. He'd be like, whatever.
Hold up.
Can't spell.
That's the fun part, right? Like putting in everything. The biggest thing on these is honestly making sure your numbers are correct. If your spelling is off, I'm not going to count off for that. And you'll want it correct in your journal in Cengage because it'll make you do it correctly. But on this ledger, I'm really just concerned with your balances. Okay, so I'm just going to keep entering these in, and then I'll walk around and make sure everybody is getting them down. Make sure once you get to accumulated depreciation, you switch over to the credit side.
And when you get to dividends, they're not gonna even have a date or anything. You're just gonna leave everything from dividends low or blank, correct?
Correct. Yes, yeah,
You
once
don't put a date
you,
on dividends?
No. because
yeah, there's no
not a
balance.
or anything.
Oh, okay, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, so you just have to put this stuff in for those with balances,
Okay.
Here it is, I got all happy. I was putting in 5-1 everywhere.
right? And then you're like, wait, I don't have to. Yeah, and we'll learn more about why some of the accounts don't have balances in chapter 4. But yeah, once you've put in retained earnings, you are finished with this part. Okay, recording. Okay. So now if you flip your instructions back over, what we are going to do is we are going to click on the journal tab. So open up the journal. Okay, stop. Okay, there we go. So on here, your journal is going to look like a real journal. And mine, I know I have it blown up so you can't see the full thing. On mine, I know it's small now, but my journal I have open, and you should see it on yours. I'm on page 5 of the journal. So pages 1 through 4, we're already done for April. We're used for journalizing in April transactions. I'm going to make it big again though. So we're on page 5 of the journal, and now we are ready to journalize the transactions that they have listed here on your instructions page. So we're just going to start with May 3rd, and we're going to go through and journalize transactions. So as you're doing this, I'm going to tell you a few things. In the real world, we would, in our journal, skip a line between each transaction. I don't know why, but they don't have us do that. So you will not skip a line. You'll just do May 3rd and then go on to the next transaction. So you don't have to skip the journal page, the journal tab.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to go and journalize. Remember, because here, this is a blank sheet. It's not the drop-down menus like we did in the example together. So remember, for every transaction, you need at least 1 debit and at least 1 credit. Okay, so show me both sides of the transaction. Also, remember to always list your debit account first. Okay, so those are just some big, when you're working on this blank, whenever we get to the blank, students stop putting in 2 things. So, you know, you're given this big blank sheet. So remember, you have to show both sides, the debit and the credit. List your debit before your credit. Those are the 2 biggest errors I see. So a debit and a credit, at least 1 debit, at least 1 credit. You will have a couple of compound entries. And list your debit before your credit for each transaction. Okay. Trying to think what else I want to tell you right now. I think that's the big thing. So we're going to go through, we're going to do the first 1 or 2 together. So you can kind of.
I can't get mine full.
The journal?
No, it's pulling up, it says, well, let me get over here to the dates. It's like,
Oh, click that. It'll kind
Oh.
of give you more space to work with. And
Nope.
then use your scroll down.
that's where I've been messing with it.
Actually, click that one right, the 3rd one. There we go. And then get rid of that one. Click on your journal again. And click away from your instructions and your chart of attacks. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
Sometimes
I was like, it's not letting me.
it's picky, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so May 3rd, again, we're going to start in our date, and I'm going to type the word May and 3, May 3rd. Now, it says May 3rd, we received cash from clients as an advance payment for services to be provided and recorded it as unearned fees. Well, they kind of told us what they did. So we received cash. So what's happening to cash? It's going up. Good. So we'll debit it. So cash is increasing. So we're going to debit cash. And then they told us it's for advance payment for services. And they tell us to record it in the account unearned fees. So that one's a new account. We talked briefly about. Again, unearned fees is a liability account. So it's when a customer pays us in advance for services. So they've given us money up front, and then we're going to provide those consulting services, in this case, at a later date. So we owe them a service. So I'm just going to always list my debit first. So I'm going to start with cash. As you're typing these, you'll notice when I'm on this blank page, if I type it wrong, it doesn't match an account, and then it'll turn red. So if it turns red, your spelling is off. Now I could type the wrong account and it'll stay, you know, it'll stay black. But if I am misspelling an account, it will at least alert you. Okay, so I need cash. I'm going to leave the post reference blank until I post this to my ledger. Okay, and then I debited it. Well, I received $4,500. And again, Cengage will automatically format that correctly. So I'm just going to put in 4,500. Okay. So now I have my debit account. On my second line, I do not need to enter the date again. I already have that for this transaction. So I'm just going to type unearned fees. And I'm going to tab over to my credit and put that 4,500 in. Okay. So my first journal entry on my first line, I typed the date and then I put cash, 4,500 debit. Second line, unearned fees, 4,500 credit.
And you just follow the order that they have them listed in.
Yes, yeah, you will go in
You know if they're gonna
transaction.
throw a trick on us on that one.
No, yeah, you'll journalize in order that they give them to you.
That's also numerical order if you want.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. So it'll go in date order. Notice too on the formatting, you don't have to do the indentation here. When you put in the 4,500 credit, it'll automatically format that for you. So you don't have to like hit, you know, space bar or anything. Okay, so I've already journalized one transaction. So here's where you have a couple options. You could go through and journalize May 3rd through the 17th. This is all going to be on page 5 of this journal. So you could just on the next line type 5. You don't have to retype May since we're in the same month on the same journal page. You can. Yeah, you can. It doesn't matter. And then you would just start journalizing and just keep going. Okay. So you can do that. You could journalize the May 3rd through the May 17th transactions. Then you could take that and post those to the ledger, you know, all at once, or you could go one by one. Does that make sense? So I could take this transaction I just journalized and post it to the ledger right now, or I could wait and do a lot of journal entries and then post them. I don't care which method you use. Just put in your post references when you post to the ledger. That way you know it's been posted. I say I don't. And I don't, but I will give you a hint, another hint, right? When you're doing journal entries, you will be able to do check my work, but not until you've done a whole page of journal entries. So I highly recommend, do your May 3rd through May 17th, check your work, fix any errors, and then post to your ledger. That way, you know, you don't have to go, if you've made a mistake, you don't have to go back and fix your ledger too. Does that make sense? So highly recommend, go ahead and journalize May 3rd through the 17th. Check your work, make sure everything is correct, and it'll turn red in the cell if it's incorrect. And then you can post to your ledger.
When's this due?
Like before spring break, like March 11th. So again, as far as this project goes, we're gonna spend the rest of class time here, about another 45 minutes or so, 40 minutes. And you can work on this or chapter 2 homework. I don't care which one you work on. And then if you have questions, I'll be here to help you. But remember, before you leave, about 3:05 or so, I'll prompt you guys, make sure everyone saved their ledger so you can work on it at home. So if you want to knock out chapter 2 homework first, since that's due Monday night, feel free to knock that out. But just be working on this and journalizing every once in a while. Do a couple journal entries a day.
While you eat dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of watching Netflix, right? Spend 20 minutes on accounting, or while you watch Netflix.
Chapter 2 homework was exactly this.
Yes, yeah, you're doing, is that one problem in chapter 2 homework is just like this. So you're gonna get a lot of practice before that chapter 2 exam, which hopefully will be very helpful. Yeah, you actually had it open here, so you would just click on that one, and then you're ready to post, you can post there. Yeah, let's do that first one together. Yeah, let me show everyone. Let's do one post, that journal entry we just did together, let's go ahead and post that to our ledger together. That way you guys kind of see the process completely before you work on your own. So on this very first entry, we had a debit to cash of $4,500 on May 3rd. So to post that to my ledger, I'm going to open up my ledger, which you should have open down at the bottom. I'm going to scroll all the way up to cash.
Would it not be under fees?
I'm doing the cash first, but it doesn't. Yeah, we're going to post to cash and unearned fees. Yeah. So we had a debit to cash on the 3rd, which I could just put a 3. So on the 3rd, we had a debit to cash of $4,500. So again, once you start doing from your journal, leave that item blank. You don't have to put anything. So I'm just going to put the day. My post reference is always the journal page it came from. May 3rd through the 17th should all be on journal page 5. So I'm going to put a 5 in. And then I'm going to put my $4,500 debit. $4,500 debit.
Oh.
Now, again, if you understand Excel formulas, you can put in a formula to add and subtract if you want. If not, though, use a calculator, use your phone. I want to take this existing debit balance plus, because I received cash, I'm increasing my cash balance. So I'm going to take $22,100 plus $4,500.
46,600.
$26,600. Okay. So that balance column is used just for that. We want to keep a running total of what's in our cash account after every transaction that affects cash.
Kind of like you're doing your bank, when you're doing your bank.
Yeah, exactly like your bank account, for those that actually keep a bank account. Right? But even if you just look at it, it's exactly what your bank account looks like.
Income.
This credit you just subtracted and put it same number like right underneath the balance.
Yes, you got it. Yeah, perfect. If that $4,500 would have been a credit, I would take $22,100 minus 45, and it would still be a debit balance because cash is still positive. Yeah, great question.
Now, item, we don't have to put anything there because it's cash, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we'll use the item next chapter when we learn like adjusting and closing entries. But right now, you don't need anything in that
Just
item.
put the date.
Yep, just put your date, put your journal page, your debit or your credit, and then keep that running balance going. Okay.
And then we would also have to do the next one because it was.
Unearned fees,
unearned
yes.
Fees, so we would go down to earned fees and do that one, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'm just going to scroll down, and it's in liability, so it should be about halfway down. So I find unearned fees, which is account 23. I do the same thing. I put my 3 in for the date. My post reference is page 5 of the journal. And then here it was a credit of $4,500. And we had an existing debt or credit balance of $2,500, and we're crediting it, so we're just adding. Okay. Unearned fees is a liability. It has a credit balance, so credit plus credit,
7,000.
7,000.
Okay.
That's not too bad.
No, I think the part where people get tripped up is keeping the running balance.
I think it'd be more confusing on the journal.
Sometimes.
Journal would confuse me more than the Excel sheet.
Yeah, it can
I
be.
almost start putting formulas in there.
Yeah. I love formulas. And then the last part you want to do on your journal, now that we have posted that to the ledger, we want to put in our post reference. So for cash, I would put in the account number, which I think was 11, wasn't it? 11 or 12. Now I have to think. Unearned fees is 23. Yeah. So cash is account number 11. I see that in my ledger. It's over here. And so in here on my journal, I'm going to put the account number as the post reference. So cash will have 11, unearned fees is account 23.
Okay.
Okay.
And that just creates that cross-reference between that post, and we know where it is in the journal, and we know where we put it in the ledger. Okay. And it lets us know that we posted it. So now when you're working on this later,
You know, you already have that done.
uh-huh.
Okay.
So yeah, again, just finish or keep working on your transactions. I'm going to give you one more hint because there is one tricky one. On May 16th, you want to make a note of this on your instruction page. May 16th is a tricky transaction. It's something we haven't really covered yet, so I'm going to give you the correct transaction. It's a compound entry. Okay. If I read it, it says, I paid my part-time receptionist for 2 weeks' salary, which is simple enough, including the amount owed on April 30th. So what that means is if I looked at my post-closing trial balance, I actually have a balance there in salaries payable of $120. That salaries payable account, which we'll deal with next chapter, that's a liability because it ends in payable. It means that she earned salary last month and we hadn't paid her for it yet. So we owe her $120 from salaries earned last month. And again, this is something we actually cover next chapter. So, but I know some of you will already get to that before we get to chapter 3. So we are going to deal with this 120 that we owe her that we haven't paid her and
The 750.
the 750. So all total, we're paying her 750.
Okay.
The 120 we've already recognized as salary expense. And again, it's okay if this doesn't make sense right now because we'll cover it next chapter. But your journal entry,
Would be minus
yeah, you're going to take out.
the 120 from the 750.
So all total, we are going to have,
530.
I think, let me make sure I get the right account here. I'll give you the right thing. So chart of accounts, we have salary expense. The salary expense is going to be the 750 minus 120. So we're going to debit salary expense 630. And then to clear out the payable amount of 120, it has a $120 credit. I'm going to debit salaries payable 120 to zero it out because we're paying her now. And again, it's okay if it doesn't make sense right now. Put a better marker.
Yeah, I was like, I can't see that.
I know. I'm like, it's not. I know my blue one was working yesterday, so yeah, much better.
Oh, yeah. The glare from the light, couldn't see.
So we're going to have a compound entry. Okay, salary expense gets debited 630. Salaries payable gets debited 120. And cash is going to get credited the full 750. Okay, we're paying her the full amount of 750. All the salaries payable debit means is we already recognize she earned 120 last month that we owe her.
The salaries payable is going to be debited.
Yes. Yeah, salary expense is debited, salaries payable is debited.
So they're both debited.
And then cash is credited for the full amount. Okay. So yeah, just write that one down on your paper. That's one we haven't fully covered yet. And we'll be ready. When we hit chapter 3, we'll talk about that, and then you'll be like, oh, that makes sense now. But just write that down, and when you get to May 16th, that will be your journal entry. So list both of your debits and then that credit, okay?
What does it show for